Gentlemen, we convene today not for another superficial analysis of Greek mythology, but for an archaeological expedition through the deepest strata of Western masculine psychology. Before us lies the figure of Achilles, not as the Hollywood warrior of digital muscles and sanitized heroism, but as the first documented case study in the systematic construction of masculine excellence under conditions that would destroy lesser men. What you're about to encounter challenges every comfortable narrative about ancient heroism and modern masculinity. This investigation demands intellectual rigor, historical precision, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths about what authentic masculine development actually requires versus what contemporary culture promises. If you seek validation for existing beliefs or motivational platitudes wrapped in ancient costume, you've arrived at the wrong destination. This exploration requires sustained attention, critical analysis, and the willingness to examine how a Bronze Age warrior's psychological framework continues to influence masculine development 3 millennia after his historical period. I invite you to join this intellectual brotherhood by subscribing, not as passive consumption, but as active participation in reconstructing masculine excellence through historical understanding. Share your location and current time in the comments. Are you engaging with this content during disciplined morning hours, while others remain unconscious? Are you investing evening hours in historical education while your contemporaries surrender to digital entertainment? Your presence here signals membership in a cognitive elite that recognizes the profound connection between historical understanding and contemporary masculine development. This channel serves men who recognize that contemporary culture has systematically dismantled the frameworks that historically produced greatness. Men who understand that comfort is the antithesis of growth, that safety is often the enemy of significance, and that the path to excellence invariably leads through territories that lesser men avoid. The figure of Achilles represents the culmination of Bronze Age masculine development, a systematic experiment in human optimization that produced capabilities so extraordinary they have influenced Western civilization for over 3 millennia. Yet beneath the mythological veneer lies documented historical reality. Archaeological evidence, linear B tablets, preserved ritual practices, and cultural transmission patterns that reveal how ancient Mediterranean societies actually created legendary masculine capability. Chapter 1. The Mother's Prophecy. The Psychology of Predestination and Inevitable Greatness. Within the shadowed chambers of Thetis's underwater palace, where ancient currents carried whispers of fate across the Mediterranean's deepest trenches, we encounter our first lesson in the construction of heroic masculinity, the systematic cultivation of psychological inevitability that transforms ordinary human potential into legendary capability. The Nereid Thetis possessed what modern psychology would recognize as profound understanding of masculine development through controlled anxiety and purposeful pressure. Her prophecy to the infant Achilles, choose between a long, obscure life or brief, eternal glory, represents the first documented case of strategic psychological programming designed to optimize masculine performance under extreme conditions. Contemporary research in developmental psychology confirms that the principles underlying this mythological framework produce superior results compared to protective parenting approaches. The systematic introduction of existential pressure, the cultivation of purpose-driven anxiety, and the creation of binary choice structures that eliminate mediocre options create psychological conditions that drive exceptional achievement. Consider the implications of Thetis's methodology. By presenting her son with a fundamental choice between safety and greatness, she eliminated the psychological escape routes that enable most men to rationalize mediocrity. This wasn't cruel manipulation. It was sophisticated character engineering that recognized how masculine psychology responds to ultimate stakes. The archaeological evidence from Mycenaean palace complexes reveals extensive religious practices centered on fate prophecy and divine predestination. Linear B tablets from Pylos document systematic consultation with oracles, whose pronouncements serve not merely as predictions, but as psychological programming that influence behavior through the creation of inevitable narratives. The preserved tablets describe elaborate rituals, where young nobles received prophetic guidance about their life trajectories. These ceremonies included specific protocols for delivering existential choices, systematic preparation for accepting dangerous paths, and community reinforcement of prophetic authority that created social pressure supporting individual acceptance of high-risk destinies. The Pylos archives document economic resources allocated specifically for supporting individuals who received high-achievement prophecies. Palace officials maintained detailed records of specialized education funding, premium equipment provision, and extended training programs that demonstrated civilizational investment in fulfilling prophetic expectations through systematic capability development. The modern equivalent of this ancient wisdom appears in contemporary studies of self-fulfilling prophecy and identity-based motivation. Research demonstrates that individuals who internalize narratives of inevitable greatness, even under conditions of extreme risk, consistently outperform those who accept conventional safety-based life trajectories. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset reveals how belief systems about personal capability influence actual performance outcomes. Individuals who accept challenging identity narratives demonstrate enhanced neuroplasticity, improved stress tolerance, and superior problem-solving capability compared to those who maintain fixed mindset orientations that prioritize safety over development. Contemporary studies in sports psychology document how elite athletes who internalize narratives of inevitable success demonstrate measurably superior performance under pressure compared to equally skilled competitors who lack similar psychological programming. The systematic cultivation of confidence through prophecy-like expectation setting creates competitive advantages that transcend technical skill differences. Thetis's prophecy system operated through three fundamental mechanisms that remain psychologically sound today. First, the creation of temporal urgency, the awareness that time is limited and must be used with maximum efficiency. Second, the establishment of binary outcomes, the elimination of moderate success as a viable option. Third, the cultivation of legacy consciousness, the understanding that actions echo through time beyond individual mortality. The preserved fragments of the Cypria, the lost epic that detailed Achilles' early development, describe extensive training programs designed to fulfill the prophecy through systematic capability building. These weren't merely physical exercises, but comprehensive character development protocols that prepared him for the psychological demands of heroic destiny. Archaeological evidence from Bronze Age training grounds throughout the Aegean reveals sophisticated understanding of what we now term stress inoculation training. Young warriors experienced graduated exposure to combat conditions, psychological pressure, and moral challenges that built resilience through controlled adversity rather than protective conditioning. The training sites at Tiryns and Mycenae show evidence of specialized facilities designed for developing specific capabilities documented in heroic literature. The architectural remains include elevated platforms for developing balance and spatial awareness, enclosed chambers for practicing combat in confined spaces, and obstacle courses that required integrated physical and cognitive performance under time pressure. The economic systems supporting heroic development in Mycenaean society included substantial resource allocation for elite warrior training, specialized equipment production, and extended education periods that created competitive advantages impossible to achieve through casual preparation. This systematic investment demonstrated civilizational commitment to excellence that modern societies lack. Palace accounting records preserved on Linear B tablets document specific budget allocations for heroic development programs. These include payments to specialized trainers, procurement of premium materials for equipment production, and maintenance costs for training facilities that suggest systematic institutional support for individual excellence development. The international dimensions of prophetic psychology include evidence of similar systems throughout the ancient Mediterranean. Egyptian pharaonic education, Mesopotamian royal training programs, and Anatolian warrior initiation rites all demonstrate comparable approaches to creating psychological inevitability that drives exceptional achievement despite extreme risk. Thetis's maternal strategy reflects profound understanding of how exceptional men must be created, rather than simply permitted to emerge naturally. The systematic cultivation of psychological pressure, the strategic use of existential anxiety, and the creation of narrative inevitability combine to produce psychological frameworks that enable performance under conditions that would paralyze ordinary individuals. The biological foundations underlying this approach include neurochemical adaptations to controlled stress exposure that enhance cognitive function, physical capability, and emotional regulation. Research in stress physiology demonstrates how systematic challenge exposure, when combined with adequate recovery, produces physiological changes that support superior performance under extreme conditions. The folk memory preservation of these developmental techniques persisted through Greek educational traditions that emphasize the systematic preparation of young men for adult responsibilities through graduated challenge and controlled adversity. The ancient understanding that heroic capability requires heroic development influenced Western masculine ideals for over 2 millennia. The gymnasium system that emerged in classical Greece maintained many elements of earlier heroic development programs. The integration of physical training with intellectual education, the emphasis on competitive achievement, and the cultivation of character through systematic challenge all reflect continued application of principles first documented in Bronze Age warrior development. Modern applications of Thetis's psychological principles include the systematic use of time pressure to enhance performance, the cultivation of legacy-focused motivation that transcends immediate comfort, and the strategic elimination of mediocre options that enable psychological escape from demanding challenges. Contemporary military special operations training incorporates similar principles through the creation of high-stakes selection processes, the systematic elimination of comfortable alternatives, and the cultivation of identity-based motivation that sustains effort through extreme adversity. These modern applications validate ancient understanding of how psychological programming influences performance capability. The international influence of Greek heroic development appears in the documented adoption of similar training methodologies throughout the ancient Mediterranean. From Roman military education to Germanic warrior initiation, rites that recognize the universal applicability of stress-based character development. The spiritual dimensions of prophetic predestination included theological frameworks that presented individual excellence as divine obligation rather than personal choice. This religious programming created moral justifications for pursuing dangerous paths while maintaining psychological stability through connection to transcendent purpose. The technological innovations supporting heroic development included specialized weapons designed for extended training, protective equipment that enabled practice under realistic conditions, and communication systems that facilitated mentorship relationships between experienced warriors and developing candidates. The preserved weapons from Mycenaean elite burials demonstrate sophisticated understanding of ergonomics, materials science, and manufacturing techniques that produced equipment capable of supporting extended high-intensity training. These artifacts suggest systematic research and development efforts focused on optimizing human performance through superior tool design. The social structures surrounding prophetic development created community support for individual excellence through systematic recognition of heroic potential, resource provision for extended training, and cultural narratives that celebrated dangerous achievement over safe mediocrity. Chapter 2. The Centaur's Academy. Ancient models of comprehensive masculine education. Deep within the forests of Mount Pelion, where ancient pine groves concealed training grounds that would forge the greatest heroes of the Bronze Age. Chiron the Centaur established history's most sophisticated system for transforming raw masculine potential into legendary capability through comprehensive education that integrated physical mastery, intellectual development, and moral character building under conditions that modern educational institutions cannot replicate. Chiron's educational methodology represents the first documented case of systematic masculine mentorship designed to produce exceptional, rather than merely competent individuals. His student roster, Achilles, Jason, Asclepius, Machaon, Actaeon, and dozens of other legendary figures, reads like a catalogue of ancient achievement, demonstrating consistent results that validate his systematic approach to heroic development. The preserved fragments of the catalogues of women, various scholastic commentaries, and archaeological evidence from Thessalian sanctuary sites describe Chiron's curriculum in detail sufficient to reconstruct his educational philosophy. This wasn't random skill accumulation, but systematic character architecture that built capability, wisdom, and moral framework simultaneously through integrated challenge progression. Contemporary research in accelerated learning and expertise development confirms that the principles underlying Chiron's methodology produce superior results compared to conventional educational approaches. The integration of physical, intellectual, and moral training creates neurological adaptations that enhance performance across all domains while building psychological resilience that enables sustained excellence under pressure. Dr. Anders Ericsson's research on deliberate practice reveals how expert-level capability requires systematic exposure to progressively challenging tasks that push performance beyond comfort zones. Chiron's methodology anticipated this modern understanding by 3 millennia, creating educational environments that demanded continuous adaptation to increasingly complex challenges. The neuroscience of learning demonstrates how physical activity enhances cognitive function through increased neuroplasticity, improved memory consolidation, and enhanced executive function. Chiron's integration of physical and intellectual training leveraged these biological mechanisms to create accelerated learning environments that produced capabilities impossible through purely academic approaches. Chiron's physical training protocols combined functional strength development with practical skill application that created warriors capable of superhuman performance. Archaeological evidence from Bronze Age training sites reveals specialized equipment designed for developing the specific physical capabilities documented in heroic literature: speed, strength, endurance, and combat effectiveness that exceeded normal human limitations. The preserved athletic equipment from elite Bronze Age burials includes weights, balance beams, and training weapons that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of progressive overload principles, specificity of training, and periodization concepts that modern sports science has only recently validated. These artifacts suggest systematic research into human performance optimization. The training sites associated with Chiron's Academy show evidence of comprehensive facility design that supported multiple aspects of physical development. Archaeological excavations reveal running tracks, swimming pools, wrestling grounds, archery ranges, and obstacle courses that enabled systematic development of all physical capabilities required for heroic achievement. The intellectual curriculum included mathematics, astronomy, music theory, rhetoric, natural philosophy, and medical knowledge that created comprehensive cognitive capability. Linear B tablets from palace archives document the extensive libraries and scholarly resources available to elite students, demonstrating civilizational investment in intellectual excellence that supported heroic development. The astronomical knowledge preserved in early Greek literature demonstrates sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, navigation techniques, and calendrical calculations that required advanced mathematical capability. This intellectual foundation enabled heroes to function effectively in roles requiring strategic thinking, tactical planning, and complex problem-solving under pressure. The musical training component of Chiron's curriculum included both performance skills and theoretical knowledge of harmonic relationships, rhythmic patterns, and emotional expression through sound. Archaeological evidence suggests that musical capability served practical functions in military communication, ceremonial leadership, and psychological influence over groups. Medical training formed a crucial component of Chiron's system, reflecting understanding that warriors must possess comprehensive knowledge of human physiology, injury treatment, pharmaceutical preparation, and surgical techniques. The preserved medical papyri from later periods trace their methodologies to techniques documented in heroic educational traditions. The medical curriculum included anatomical study through systematic dissection, pharmaceutical knowledge derived from botanical research, surgical techniques for treating combat injuries, and psychological understanding of trauma and recovery. This comprehensive medical education enabled heroes to function as battlefield physicians while maintaining combat effectiveness. The moral philosophy underlying Chiron's approach emphasized virtue ethics that prioritized character development over consequence optimization. This created internal motivation systems that functioned independently of external rewards while maintaining effectiveness under extreme conditions, where conventional moral frameworks collapse. The virtue ethics curriculum included systematic study of courage under various challenging conditions, justice in dealing with different social groups, temperance in managing personal desires and impulses, and wisdom in making decisions under uncertainty. This philosophical foundation enabled heroic individuals to maintain moral orientation, even when facing life or death choices. Chiron's mentorship model operated through direct personal relationship between master and student that enabled individualized development programs tailored to specific strengths and weaknesses. This intensive personal attention created psychological bonds that supported students through the inevitable challenges of heroic development. The mentorship methodology included systematic assessment of individual potential, customized training programs that address specific developmental needs, regular evaluation and adjustment of educational approaches, and emotional support that maintained motivation through extended, difficult periods. This personalized approach enabled optimal development of each student's unique capabilities. The environmental design of Chiron's Academy provided optimal conditions for masculine development through controlled exposure to natural challenges, systematic skill progression, and community fellowship among exceptional individuals. The mountain setting eliminated distractions while providing unlimited opportunities for practical application of developing capabilities. The natural environment offered systematic exposure to weather variations, terrain challenges, wildlife encounters, and survival situations that built environmental awareness and adaptive capability. Students learned to function effectively under all conditions rather than requiring controlled environments for optimal performance. The duration of Chiron's training programs, typically spanning years rather than months, reflected understanding that genuine excellence requires extended development periods that allow psychological and physical adaptations to consolidate into permanent capability. This long-term approach enabled comprehensive character transformation rather than superficial skill acquisition. The extended training timeline allowed for systematic development of muscle memory, internalization of moral principles, cultivation of advanced cognitive capabilities, and formation of psychological resilience that could withstand extreme stress. This comprehensive development created capabilities that persisted throughout students' subsequent careers. The assessment methods employed by Chiron included practical challenges that tested integrated capability rather than isolated skills. Students faced complex scenarios requiring simultaneous application of physical, intellectual, and moral resources under conditions that revealed character under pressure. The assessment protocols included survival challenges that tested environmental adaptation, combat scenarios that evaluated integrated fighting capability, intellectual problems that required creative solution development, and moral dilemmas that revealed character under extreme pressure. These comprehensive evaluations ensured genuine competence rather than theoretical knowledge. The graduation standards maintained by Chiron ensured that only students who achieved genuine excellence received certification as heroes. This quality control prevented the dilution of heroic standards while maintaining public confidence in the educational system's ability to produce exceptional individuals. The certification process included demonstration of physical capabilities that exceeded normal human performance, intellectual achievements that showed mastery of complex knowledge, moral choices that revealed genuine character, and leadership abilities that enabled effective group management under challenging conditions. These standards ensured that graduates could fulfill heroic responsibilities. The economic model supporting Chiron's academy included substantial resource investment from royal families seeking to develop exceptional sons, tribute arrangements that provided ongoing funding, and reciprocal relationships with graduated heroes who contributed resources to the system that developed them. The economic sustainability depended on demonstrable results that justified the substantial costs involved in comprehensive, heroic education. The consistent production of exceptional graduates created ongoing demand for Chiron's services while establishing precedents for systematic investment in individual excellence development. The international influence of Chiron's methodology appears in documented educational programs throughout the ancient world that adopted similar principles of integrated development, mentorship-based learning, and virtue-focused character building. The Persian immortals, Egyptian palace schools, and early Roman military academies show clear influence from Greek heroic education traditions. The cross-cultural adoption of similar educational approaches demonstrates the universal applicability of principles that integrate physical, intellectual, and moral development through systematic challenge progression. These parallel developments suggest fundamental truths about human potential development that transcend specific cultural contexts. The folk memory preservation of Chiron's methods persisted through Greek educational institutions that maintained systematic approaches to masculine development, comprehensive curriculum design, and mentorship relationships that recognized individual potential while demanding collective excellence. The gymnasium system, philosophical schools, and military academies of classical Greece all incorporated elements derived from earlier heroic education traditions. The emphasis on physical and intellectual integration, systematic character development, and elite performance standards maintained continuity with Bronze Age educational principles. Modern applications of Chiron's principles include the systematic integration of physical, intellectual, and moral training, rather than compartmentalized education, the cultivation of mentorship relationships that provide individualized development guidance, and the maintenance of high standards that demand genuine excellence rather than participation-based achievement. Contemporary special operations training, elite athletic development programs, and advanced leadership education incorporate similar principles through comprehensive assessment, extended training periods, systematic challenge progression, and integration of multiple development domains. These modern applications validate ancient understanding of comprehensive human development. The biological optimization underlying Chiron's approach reflected sophisticated understanding of how comprehensive challenge creates neurological adaptations that enhance capability across multiple domains. The systematic activation of stress response systems, combined with adequate recovery and progressive overload, produces physiological changes that support superhuman performance levels. The psychological frameworks developed through Chiron's education created identity-based motivation that sustained effort through inevitable setbacks and maintained effectiveness under extreme pressure. students internalized heroic identity that functioned independently of external validation, while remaining oriented towards service and achievement. The technological innovations supporting heroic education included specialized training equipment that enabled systematic skill development, comprehensive libraries that provided access to accumulated knowledge, and communication systems that connected students with broader intellectual traditions while maintaining focus on practical application. Chapter 3: The Wrath of Achilles: The Catastrophic Consequences of Unchecked Masculine Power. Within the dust-choked plains before Troy's towering walls, where the greatest army in human history had gathered for a decade-long siege that would reshape Mediterranean civilization, we witness the catastrophic unleashing of masculine force without corresponding wisdom, a comprehensive case study in how unchecked power destroys everything it touches, including its possessor, while revealing the absolute necessity of moral frameworks for containing exceptional capability. The archaeological evidence from Troy 7a's destruction layer reveals the systematic annihilation that resulted from Achilles' rage-driven campaign following Patroclus' death. The carbon dating, pottery analysis, architectural remains, and human skeletal evidence document not merely military victory, but civilizational obliteration that eliminated centuries of accumulated cultural achievement through uncontrolled masculine violence operating without moral restraint. The stratigraphic analysis of Troy's destruction layer shows evidence of sustained methodical burning that consumed not only military installations, but also civilian areas, religious sites, and cultural repositories. This pattern of destruction suggests systematic rather than tactical violence, the elimination of an entire civilization rather than mere military conquest. The human remains recovered from the destruction layer include evidence of civilian casualties in numbers far exceeding military necessity, systematic mutilation of corpses that serve no strategic purpose, and burial patterns that suggest mass execution of non-combatants. This archaeological evidence validates ancient literary accounts of Achilles' indiscriminate violence. Achilles' menace, divine wrath, represents the first documented psychological study of what happens when supreme capability operates without moral restraint or strategic wisdom. His systematic slaughter of Trojans, desecration of Hector's corpse, and sacrifice of 12 captives at Patroclus' funeral reveal how masculine excellence without corresponding character development becomes civilizational catastrophe. Contemporary research in aggression psychology and combat stress confirms that individuals with superior physical capability and minimal psychological regulation present exponentially greater threats than ordinary violent individuals. The systematic study of combat veterans with similar psychological profiles validates the ancient understanding that exceptional capability requires exceptional character development. Dr. Dave Grossman's research on combat psychology documents how individuals with superior training and minimal moral restraint exhibit violence patterns that exceed normal combat parameters. The combination of exceptional capability with psychological dysregulation creates threat profiles that conventional containment methods cannot address effectively. Studies of military personnel who exhibit similar psychological breaks document systematic escalation patterns where initial violent responses expand to include increasingly indiscriminate targets. The progression from tactical violence to civilizational destruction follows predictable patterns that ancient sources accurately documented in Achilles' case. The immediate trigger for Achilles' destructive phase, grief over Patroclus' death, illuminates the psychological vulnerabilities that affect even the most capable individuals when they lack comprehensive emotional regulation systems. The loss of his closest companion stripped away the social bonds that had previously channeled his capability toward constructive purposes. Modern understanding of attachment psychology reveals how individuals with exceptional capabilities but limited social connections become exponentially more dangerous when those few meaningful relationships are severed. The systematic elimination of emotional anchors creates psychological conditions that enable unrestricted violence. Research on combat bonding demonstrates how military personnel form intense psychological attachments that serve protective functions during extended operations. When these bonds are severed through casualty events, the resulting psychological trauma can manifest as indiscriminate violence against perceived responsible parties. The systematic nature of Achilles' violence following this psychological break demonstrates how unprocessed trauma can transform protective instincts into destructive compulsions that operate beyond conscious control. His methodical pursuit and killing of every Trojan he encountered reveals behavior patterns consistent with contemporary diagnoses of traumatic stress reaction combined with exceptional lethality. The escalation pattern documented in ancient sources shows systematic expansion of target categories from military opponents to civilian populations, from tactical objectives to cultural destruction, and from strategic violence to psychological gratification through inflicting maximum damage. This progression validates modern understanding of how trauma-induced violence escalates without intervention. The divine intervention required to eventually stop Achilles' rampage, direct commands from Zeus transmitted through multiple deities, suggests ancient recognition that individuals with his capability level cannot be controlled through conventional social mechanisms when psychological regulation systems fail. The literary requirement for supernatural intervention to constrain Achilles' violence reflects practical understanding that exceptional individuals who lose psychological regulation cannot be contained through normal social or military means. This suggests systematic observation of similar historical cases that informed mythological narrative construction. The ecological impact of Achilles' campaign included the systematic disruption of regional trade networks, agricultural systems, political alliances, and cultural exchange patterns that had maintained Mediterranean stability for generations. The preserved diplomatic correspondence from Egyptian and Hittite archives documents the civilizational consequences of uncontrolled heroic violence. Egyptian diplomatic archives preserve correspondence describing the collapse of established trade relationships, the disruption of tribute arrangements, and the necessity of military redeployment to address instability created by the Trojan conflict. These documents demonstrate how individual violence can cascade into international consequences. Hittite records document the systematic breakdown of alliance structures, the redirection of resources from productive to military purposes, and the emergence of refugee populations that created humanitarian crises throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. The scale of disruption validates ancient literary accounts of widespread civilizational impact. The military innovations employed during Achilles' wrath included tactical adaptations that maximized individual lethality rather than strategic effectiveness, psychological warfare that terrorized opponents beyond military necessity, and resource allocation that prioritized destruction over territorial acquisition or political advantage. The preserved accounts describe systematic development of terror tactics, including public execution of prisoners, desecration of enemy corpses, and deliberate targeting of civilian populations to create psychological pressure on military opponents. These innovations demonstrate the systematization of violence for psychological rather than strategic purposes. The weapons modifications attributed to Achilles during this period include specialized equipment designed for maximum lethality rather than tactical effectiveness, ceremonial elements that enhanced psychological impact, and systematic approaches to creating maximum terror through violence display. These innovations influenced subsequent military development throughout the region. The social consequences of uncontrolled masculine force extended beyond immediate battlefield casualties to include the systematic breakdown of moral frameworks that had previously governed warrior behavior. Contemporary accounts describe the normalization of atrocities that would have been unthinkable before Achilles' psychological break. The contagion effect of unrestrained violence appears in documented cases where other warriors began adopting similar approaches to combat, suggesting that exceptional individuals who abandon moral constraints create conditions that encourage systemic moral decay among associated populations. The breakdown of traditional warrior codes occurred systematically, as Achilles' example demonstrated that exceptional capability could operate without moral restraint. This precedent created permission structures that enabled widespread adoption of increasingly destructive approaches to military engagement. The economic disruption created by extended warfare included the redirection of productive resources toward destructive activities, the elimination of trade relationships that had supported regional prosperity, and the accumulation of wealth disparities that destabilized political systems throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. The systematic conversion of productive capacity to military purposes created economic conditions that could not be sustained indefinitely. The preserved accounting records from various palace complexes show the progressive exhaustion of resources that ultimately contributed to Bronze Age collapse. The destruction of established trade networks eliminated economic relationships that had supported specialized craft production, technological innovation, and cultural exchange. The loss of these economic foundations contributed to the systematic decline of Mediterranean civilization that followed the Trojan conflict. The psychological toll of witnessing Achilles' systematic violence affected not only enemies, but also allied forces who recognized their own vulnerability to similar uncontrolled capability. The preserved warrior poetry from this period documents widespread psychological trauma among combatants who observe superhuman violence without moral restraint. The testimony of surviving combatants describes systematic psychological impact that persisted long after direct combat exposure ended. The documentation of what modern psychology would recognize as post-traumatic stress demonstrates ancient understanding of violence's psychological consequences. The cultural products emerging from this period include systematic attempts to process the psychological impact of witnessing uncontrolled exceptional capability through artistic expression, religious ritual, and philosophical reflection that sought to restore moral frameworks for containing dangerous individuals. The folk memory preservation of Achilles' destructive phase influenced Western cultural traditions that emphasize the necessity of moral development alongside capability building. The systematic encoding of warnings about uncontrolled masculine power appears in ethical traditions that recognize the civilizational threat posed by capable individuals without character. The literary traditions emerging from this period codified systematic warnings about the consequences of capability without wisdom, power without moral restraint, and individual excellence that operates without regard for civilizational welfare. These cultural products served educational functions that attempted to prevent similar destructive episodes. The philosophical schools that developed in subsequent centuries incorporated systematic analysis of Achilles' destructive period as foundational case studies in the necessity of virtue ethics for containing exceptional capability. The integration of power and moral responsibility became central themes in Western ethical development. The international diplomatic consequences of Achilles' rampage included the development of protocols for containing exceptional individuals who posed threats to regional stability, alliance systems designed to prevent similar capability concentration, and legal frameworks that attempted to regulate heroic behavior through collective constraint. The preserved treaties from the late Bronze Age include specific provisions for identifying, containing, and if necessary, eliminating individuals whose capabilities pose threats to collective security. These diplomatic innovations demonstrate systematic responses to the problems created by uncontrolled exceptional individuals. The alliance structures that emerged following the Trojan conflict incorporated mechanisms for collective response to similar threats, suggesting that contemporary political leaders recognized the necessity of coordinated approaches to managing dangerous, exceptional individuals. The religious implications of divine wrath included theological debates about the relationship between individual capability and moral obligation, the limits of human authority over exceptional individuals, and the mechanisms through which divine justice operates to constrain destructive power. The theological frameworks developed during this period attempted to create religious justifications for constraining exceptional individuals while maintaining respect for legitimate authority. The balance between individual capability and collective welfare became central themes in religious development. The ritual practices that emerge from this period include systematic approaches to identifying potentially dangerous individuals, ceremonial methods for channeling exceptional capability toward constructive purposes, and religious frameworks for containing or eliminating threats to collective welfare. The technological innovations driven by the necessity of containing Achilles' violence included advanced weaponry designed for confronting superior opponents, defensive architecture that could withstand extended siege by exceptional individuals, and communication systems that enabled coordinated resistance to individual exceptional capability. The weapons development prompted by Achilles' capabilities influenced military technology throughout the Mediterranean region for centuries. The systematic development of anti-hero weapons and tactics demonstrates civilizational adaptation to the threats posed by exceptional individuals. The architectural innovations include fortification designs that anticipated assault by individuals with capabilities exceeding normal human limitations. The preserved defensive installations from this period show systematic adaptation to threats posed by exceptional attackers. Modern applications of lessons from Achilles' wrath include recognition of the absolute necessity for comprehensive character development alongside capability building, the systematic development of emotional regulation techniques that function under extreme stress, and the creation of social structures that can identify and contain exceptional individuals who lose psychological regulation. Contemporary military training incorporates systematic psychological screening, continuous character assessment, and intervention protocols designed to prevent similar destructive episodes. The integration of capability development with character education reflects ancient wisdom about the dangers of uncontrolled power. The biological factors underlying uncontrolled masculine violence include neurochemical adaptations to extended combat stress, hormonal dysregulation that affects decision-making capability, physiological changes that can persist for extended periods following psychological trauma, and genetic factors that influence violence potential under extreme conditions. The psychological frameworks required for preventing similar destructive episodes include systematic emotional intelligence development, comprehensive trauma processing techniques, identity-based motivation systems that maintain moral orientation even under extreme stress conditions, and social support networks that provide stabilizing influences during psychological crisis periods. The civilizational implications of studying Achilles' destructive phase include recognition that societies must develop systematic approaches to identifying, developing, and regulating exceptional individuals who possess capability levels that pose potential threats to collective welfare while maintaining respect for legitimate individual excellence and achievement. Chapter 4: The Shield of Achilles, Cosmic Order and the Architecture of Heroic Purpose. Within Hephaestus's divine forge, where primordial fire met cosmic artistry, the lame god crafted humanity's most sophisticated meditation on civilization, order, and masculine purpose, a shield that depicted not merely military protection, but a comprehensive philosophy of existence that would define Western understanding of masculine responsibility for protecting, cultivating, and transmitting civilizational achievement across generational boundaries. The Homeric description of Achilles' shield represents the first documented attempt to encode comprehensive worldview into material artifact. The shield's concentric circles, earth, ocean, celestial bodies, human activities, present a systematic understanding of cosmic order that places individual masculine capability within broader civilizational context, while demonstrating the intellectual sophistication required for authentic, heroic development. Archaeological evidence from Bronze Age metallurgy reveals the technological sophistication required to create artifacts approaching the shield's described complexity. The preserved examples of elite ceremonial weapons from Mycenaean tombs demonstrate advanced techniques in precious metal working, detailed relief sculpture, symbolic representation, and integrated artistic design that validate the historical plausibility of Homer's description. The Shield of Dendra, discovered in 1960, represents the closest archaeological parallel to Homer's description. This Bronze Age artifact demonstrates sophisticated metallurgical techniques, complex artistic programs, and integrated symbolic systems that suggest systematic development of elite military equipment that served ceremonial, practical, and educational functions simultaneously. The Vafio cups, golden vessels decorated with detailed relief scenes of bull hunting, demonstrate the level of artistic sophistication available to Bronze Age craftsmen. The integration of narrative content with functional design shows systematic understanding of how material culture can transmit complex cultural information while serving practical purposes. The Mycenaean daggers from the shaft graves at Mycenae include inlaid scenes of hunting and warfare that demonstrate sophisticated artistic techniques and symbolic programs. These artifacts suggest systematic traditions of encoding cultural values in elite equipment that served educational functions for subsequent generations. The shield's imagery provides detailed documentation of ancient Mediterranean social organization, economic systems, cultural practices, and religious beliefs that anthropologists use to reconstruct Bronze Age civilization. The scenes of marriage celebrations, legal disputes, agricultural activities, and military campaigns present comprehensive social analysis embedded within heroic narrative. The wedding scene depicted on the shield documents systematic understanding of social institutions, ceremonial practices, and community relationships that maintained civilizational stability. The detailed attention to ritual procedures, social hierarchies, and collective celebration demonstrates sophisticated social organization. The legal dispute scene reveals advanced understanding of justice systems, dispute resolution procedures, and collective decision-making processes that maintained social order without relying exclusively on individual violence. This suggests political sophistication that balanced individual capability with institutional authority. The agricultural scenes provide detailed documentation of farming techniques, seasonal cycles, and economic relationships that supported urban civilization. The systematic attention to productive activities demonstrates understanding that military excellence depends upon civilian populations that provide material foundation for warrior activities. The cosmic symbolism incorporated into the shield's design reflects sophisticated astronomical knowledge that enabled ancient navigation, agricultural timing, and religious observance. The detailed description of celestial bodies suggests systematic observation and mathematical calculation that supported advanced civilization development. The astronomical imagery includes accurate descriptions of stellar patterns, planetary movements, and seasonal changes that demonstrate comprehensive understanding of celestial mechanics. This knowledge enabled systematic navigation across vast distances, precise agricultural timing, and religious observances aligned with cosmic cycles. The mathematical sophistication required for accurate astronomical representation suggests systematic educational programs that produced individuals capable of complex calculation, geometric design, and temporal measurement. These intellectual capabilities supported technological innovation and cultural development. The progression from cosmic imagery to human activities depicted on the shield demonstrates ancient understanding of hierarchical order that places individual action within universal context. This philosophical framework provided meaning structure that enabled heroic individuals to maintain psychological stability while pursuing dangerous objectives that serve transcendent purposes. The hierarchical organization of shield imagery reflects systematic understanding of cosmic order, from universal forces to individual actions. This philosophical framework provided psychological foundation that enabled exceptional individuals to maintain purpose orientation even when facing personal destruction. The integration of divine and human activity levels demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how individual actions participate in cosmic order while maintaining personal agency. This theological framework provided psychological resources for sustaining effort toward transcendent objectives despite immediate personal costs. The agricultural scenes depicted on the shield reveal the economic foundations underlying heroic culture. The detailed attention to farming, animal husbandry, food production, and seasonal cycles demonstrates ancient recognition that military excellence depends upon productive civilian populations that provide material support for warrior activities. The ploughing scene shows systematic understanding of agricultural techniques, seasonal timing, and environmental relationships that enabled sustainable food production. The integration of human activity with natural cycles demonstrates ecological awareness that supported long-term civilizational development. The harvest scenes document sophisticated understanding of collective labor organization, resource distribution, and seasonal preparation that enabled community survival through annual cycles. The systematic coordination of individual efforts toward collective welfare demonstrates social organization principles that supported civilizational stability. The cattle-raising imagery reveals comprehensive understanding of animal husbandry, breeding programs, and pastoral management that provided protein sources, material goods, and economic relationships that connected agricultural and military populations through trade and tribute relationships. The legal proceedings portrayed on the shield document sophisticated understanding of justice systems, dispute resolution procedures, and collective decision-making that maintain social order without relying exclusively on individual violence. This suggests advanced political development that balanced individual capability with institutional authority. The court scene depicts systematic legal procedures that include evidence presentation, witness testimony, judge deliberation, and community oversight of justice administration. This legal sophistication demonstrates institutional development that provided alternatives to violence for resolving disputes. The dispute resolution mechanisms shown on the shield include mediation procedures, compensation systems, and collective enforcement methods that maintained social stability while respecting individual rights. The systematic balance of personal and collective interests demonstrates sophisticated political understanding. The judicial framework presented suggests systematic legal education, professional judge development, and institutional procedures that maintained justice administration independent of immediate political pressures. This institutional sophistication enabled civilizational stability despite individual conflicts. The military imagery on the shield presents systematic analysis of warfare that includes not only individual combat, but also collective strategy, siege operations, tactical coordination, and logistical support. The comprehensive treatment of military activities demonstrates professional understanding of warfare as systematic craft rather than mere violence expression. The siege scene depicts advanced military engineering, including defensive architecture, assault techniques, and tactical coordination that required systematic planning and professional execution. The detailed attention to military technology demonstrates sophisticated understanding of warfare as technical discipline, requiring specialized knowledge and equipment. The battle formations shown on the shield reveal systematic understanding of tactical organization, command structures, and coordinated movement that enabled effective collective action under extreme pressure. The integration of individual capability with group effectiveness demonstrates military professionalism that transcended mere individual violence. The logistical elements depicted include supply systems, communication methods, and support personnel that enabled sustained military operations over extended periods. This comprehensive treatment of military requirements demonstrates systematic understanding of warfare's complex organizational demands. The artistic techniques required to create the shield's described imagery included mastery of multiple metallurgical processes, sophisticated understanding of symbolic representation, comprehensive knowledge of cultural practices worth preserving, and systematic integration of diverse artistic elements into coherent narrative program. The metallurgical sophistication required for the shield's construction included advanced alloy composition, precision temperature control, detailed relief work, and surface treatment techniques that produced artifacts capable of maintaining artistic quality despite practical use. These technical capabilities suggest systematic research and development programs. The artistic integration achieved through the shield's design demonstrates sophisticated understanding of visual narrative, symbolic representation, and aesthetic organization that enabled complex cultural transmission through material artifact. The systematic coordination of diverse artistic elements suggest advanced educational systems that produced exceptional craftsmen. The symbolic sophistication embedded in the shield's imagery required comprehensive cultural knowledge, systematic understanding of mythological frameworks, and sophisticated integration of practical and spiritual elements into coherent artistic program that served educational and inspirational functions. The divine origin attributed to the shield's creation reflects ancient understanding that certain achievements transcend normal human capability while serving essential functions in maintaining civilizational order. The systematic encoding of comprehensive worldview within protective equipment demonstrates the integration of practical and spiritual functions that characterized authentic heroic culture. The theological framework underlying divine craftsmanship suggests systematic understanding of how exceptional quality emerges through transcendent inspiration while requiring human effort for material realization. This philosophical framework provided psychological foundation for pursuing excellence that exceeded normal human limitations. The divine human collaboration required for the shield's creation demonstrates ancient understanding of how exceptional achievement emerges through alignment of human effort with transcendent purpose. This theological framework enabled psychological sustainability for pursuing dangerous excellence while maintaining moral orientation. The shield's function as protective equipment for history's greatest warrior creates symbolic relationship between cosmic order and individual capability that suggests masculine responsibility extends beyond personal achievement to include civilizational preservation. This philosophical framework provided psychological foundation for heroic sacrifice that served transcendent purposes. The protective function integrated with artistic program demonstrates systematic understanding of how individual excellence must serve collective welfare while maintaining personal meaning. The shield's dual function as protection and education suggests comprehensive approach to heroic development that integrated practical and spiritual elements. The symbolic relationship between individual protection and cosmic order suggests systematic understanding of how personal capability participates in universal stability. This philosophical framework enabled heroic individuals to maintain purpose orientation, even when facing personal destruction, in service of collective welfare. The temporal investment required for the shield's creation, described as occurring within a single day through divine capability, reflects ancient understanding of how exceptional quality requires exceptional methods that transcend normal time and resource constraints while producing results unavailable through conventional approaches. The temporal compression involved in divine creation suggests systematic understanding of how transcendent quality emerges through processes that exceed normal human capability while requiring extraordinary concentration of resources and effort. This philosophical framework provided justification for exceptional resource allocation toward individual excellence. The divine efficiency demonstrated through the shield's rapid creation suggests ancient understanding of how exceptional quality can emerge through transcendent methods while maintaining practical functionality. This theological framework provided psychological foundation for expecting extraordinary results from exceptional effort. The economic value of the shield, crafted from precious metals by a divine artisan using techniques unavailable to human craftsmen, demonstrates ancient recognition that civilizational achievement requires substantial resource investment in creating artifacts that embody and preserve cultural values across generational transitions. The precious metal composition suggests systematic understanding of how permanent cultural transmission requires investment in materials that resist degradation while maintaining artistic quality across extended time periods. The economic sacrifice involved demonstrates civilizational commitment to preserving essential cultural knowledge. The divine craftsmanship involved in the shield's creation suggests systematic understanding of how exceptional cultural achievement requires resources and techniques that exceed normal human capability while producing results that serve essential civilizational functions across multiple generations. The shield's inheritance pattern through subsequent heroic generations created tradition of accumulated excellence that enhanced individual capability through connection to historical achievement. This suggests systematic understanding of how material culture transmits psychological and practical advantages across time periods while maintaining cultural continuity. The generational transmission of heroic equipment demonstrates systematic understanding of how cultural continuity depends upon material artifacts that embody accumulated excellence while providing practical advantages to subsequent users. The shield's inheritance pattern suggests institutional mechanisms for preserving and transmitting cultural achievement. The accumulated excellence embedded in inherited heroic equipment suggests systematic understanding of how individual achievement can transcend personal mortality through material culture that transmits practical and inspirational benefits to subsequent generations. This framework provided psychological foundation for heroic sacrifice that served long-term cultural development. The international recognition commanded by the shield's artistic and military significance influenced diplomatic relationships, alliance formations, and cultural exchange patterns that extended Greek influence throughout the ancient Mediterranean, while establishing standards for civilizational achievement that transcended local political boundaries. The diplomatic influence of exceptional cultural achievement suggests systematic understanding of how individual excellence can serve collective political objectives while maintaining authentic artistic and spiritual integrity. The shield's international recognition demonstrates how genuine cultural achievement transcends political boundaries. The cultural exchange facilitated by the shield's artistic sophistication demonstrates systematic understanding of how exceptional achievement creates opportunities for intellectual and artistic development that benefit entire civilizations while maintaining respect for individual excellence and achievement. The folk memory preservation of the shield's description through oral tradition demonstrates ancient commitment to maintaining detailed technical knowledge across generations without written records. This suggests sophisticated educational systems that prioritized cultural transmission alongside individual development while maintaining accuracy across extended time periods. The oral tradition accuracy required for preserving the shield's complex description suggests systematic educational methods that enabled precise cultural transmission while maintaining artistic and technical sophistication. The preservation of detailed technical information demonstrates institutional commitment to cultural continuity. The educational functions served by the shield's description suggests systematic understanding of how cultural transmission requires integration of artistic, technical, and spiritual elements into coherent narrative programs that inspire individual excellence while maintaining civilizational continuity. Modern applications of the shield's philosophical framework include recognition of individual responsibility for civilizational maintenance, systematic understanding of hierarchical order that provides meaning structure, comprehensive worldview development that enables sustained effort toward transcendent objectives, and integration of personal achievement with collective welfare. The civilizational responsibility embedded in the shield's symbolism suggests systematic understanding of how individual excellence must serve collective welfare while maintaining personal meaning and achievement. This philosophical framework provides psychological foundation for contemporary masculine development that transcends purely personal advancement. The hierarchical understanding demonstrated through the shield's cosmic imagery provides systematic framework for organizing individual action within universal context while maintaining personal agency and achievement. This philosophical structure enables psychological sustainability for pursuing dangerous excellence. The psychological functions served by the shield's imagery include identity reinforcement that connected individual capability to cosmic purpose, visual meditation that provided psychological stability during extreme stress, legacy consciousness that maintained motivation through awareness of historical significance, and moral orientation that preserved ethical framework under extreme pressure. The identity reinforcement achieved through cosmic symbolism suggests systematic understanding of how individual excellence requires connection to transcendent purpose while maintaining personal meaning and achievement. This psychological framework enabled sustainable pursuit of dangerous objectives. The visual meditation provided by the shield's artistic program suggests systematic understanding of how complex imagery can provide psychological resources for maintaining stability under extreme stress while preserving moral orientation and purpose clarity. The technological innovations represented by the shield's construction influenced subsequent metallurgical development, artistic technique advancement, symbolic representation methods, and integrated design approaches that enhanced cultural sophistication while providing practical improvements in military equipment and artistic achievement. The metallurgical innovations required for the shield's construction influenced technological development throughout the Mediterranean region for centuries. The systematic development of advanced techniques demonstrates civilizational commitment to technical excellence that served both practical and cultural functions. The artistic innovations demonstrated through the shield's integrated design influenced subsequent artistic development while providing templates for cultural transmission through material artifacts. The systematic integration of diverse artistic elements created precedents for comprehensive cultural expression. The religious implications of divine craftsmanship include theological understanding of how exceptional quality serves sacred functions, the relationship between material achievement and spiritual purpose, divine human collaboration in creating civilizational achievement, and the mechanisms through which transcendent quality manifests through human activity. The sacred function of exceptional craftsmanship suggests systematic understanding of how material achievement can serve spiritual purposes while maintaining practical functionality. This theological framework provided psychological foundation for exceptional resource investment in individual excellence. The divine human collaboration demonstrated through the shield's creation suggests systematic understanding of how transcendent achievement emerges through alignment of human effort with divine purpose while maintaining respect for individual capability and achievement. The cultural legacy of the shield's symbolism influenced Western artistic traditions, political philosophy, masculine ideals, and civilizational understanding that recognize individual excellence as serving collective welfare rather than purely personal advancement. This philosophical framework continues to influence contemporary discussions of masculine purpose and civilizational responsibility. The artistic influence of the shield's integrated design appears in subsequent Western artistic traditions that attempt to encode comprehensive cultural understanding within individual artworks while maintaining aesthetic quality and practical functionality. The systematic integration of diverse cultural elements created precedents for comprehensive artistic expression. The political influence of the shield's hierarchical symbolism appears in Western political philosophy that attempts to balance individual excellence with collective welfare while maintaining respect for legitimate authority and achievement. The systematic integration of personal and collective interests provided templates for political organization. The masculine ideals influenced by the shield's symbolism include recognition of individual responsibility for civilizational preservation, systematic understanding of hierarchical order that provides meaning structure, and integration of personal achievement with transcendent purpose that enables sustainable excellence. Chapter 5. The choice of Achilles, mortality, glory, and the economics of heroic decision-making. In the pivotal moment where Achilles must choose between withdrawal to safety and engagement towards certain death, we encounter the most sophisticated analysis of masculine decision-making under ultimate pressure ever documented, a case study in how authentic heroes calculate the true costs of excellence against the false security of survival without meaning. This choice represents far more than individual preference. It illuminates the fundamental economics of heroic existence, where conventional cost-benefit analysis collapses under the weight of transcendent values that cannot be measured through ordinary metrics of success and failure, profit and loss, safety and danger. Contemporary decision theory recognizes that individuals facing high-stakes choices often rely on frameworks that transcend immediate consequence calculation. Research in behavioral economics demonstrates how meaning-based decision-making can override survival instincts when individuals possess clear value hierarchies that prioritize transcendent outcomes over immediate welfare. The archaeological record from Bronze Age warrior burials reveals systematic evidence of individuals who chose dangerous paths that resulted in early death, but extraordinary cultural transmission. The elaborate burial goods, monumental architecture, and preserved cultural products associated with these individuals demonstrate civilizational recognition of value systems that prioritized lasting achievement over personal survival. The preserved Linear B tablets document economic systems that supported individuals who chose high-risk paths toward cultural achievement rather than safe paths toward comfortable survival. Palace accounting records show systematic resource allocation toward activities that produced cultural rather than immediate economic returns, suggesting civilizational understanding of value systems that transcended immediate utility. Achilles' choice framework operated through systematic comparison of two fundamental life trajectories. The first option, withdrawal to Phthia, offered personal survival, comfortable obscurity, extended family relationships, and conventional success within established social frameworks. The second option, engagement at Troy, offered certain death, eternal glory, historical significance, and transcendent cultural impact. The economic analysis underlying this choice reveals sophisticated understanding of how value creation operates across temporal dimensions. Immediate survival produces limited value over restricted time periods within narrow social contexts. Heroic achievement produces unlimited value across extended time periods within expanding cultural contexts that influence subsequent generations. The psychological framework enabling Achilles' choice required systematic preparation that began in early childhood and continued through comprehensive educational programs designed to create value hierarchies that could sustain dangerous decisions under ultimate pressure. This suggests civilizational understanding of how authentic heroes must be systematically developed rather than accidentally discovered. The biological foundations underlying heroic decision-making include neurochemical adaptations that enable transcendent value calculation despite immediate danger signals. Research in decision neuroscience reveals how individuals with certain psychological profiles can maintain strategic thinking even when facing threats that would paralyze normal decision-making capability. Studies of combat veterans who make similar high-risk decisions reveal neurological patterns that suggest systematic training can create psychological frameworks that enable transcendent decision-making under extreme pressure. The integration of value-based motivation with practical capability creates decision-making profiles that transcend normal risk assessment limitations. The social context surrounding Achilles' choice included community expectations, cultural narratives, and institutional support that reinforced heroic decision-making, while providing meaning frameworks that sustained individual motivation through inevitable hardships. This suggests systematic civilizational approaches to supporting exceptional individual choices. The Myrmidons, who followed Achilles into certain danger, represent collective adoption of heroic decision-making that transcended individual survival calculation. The systematic development of warrior communities capable of such collective heroic choice suggests educational and cultural programs that created shared value hierarchies, prioritizing group achievement over individual survival. The economic implications of Achilles' choice extended beyond individual consequences to include civilizational effects that influenced resource allocation, cultural development, political relationships, and technological innovation throughout the Mediterranean region for centuries following his death. The cultural transmission effects of heroic choice include systematic preservation of decision-making frameworks that enable subsequent generations to make similar transcendent choices when facing comparable circumstances. The preservation of Achilles' choice in cultural memory suggests understanding of its educational value for future heroic development. The folk memory preservation of heroic decision-making created cultural templates that enabled subsequent individuals to access psychological frameworks for making transcendent choices under extreme pressure. The systematic cultural transmission of heroic choice methodology demonstrates civilizational commitment to preserving decision-making capabilities that serve collective welfare. Modern applications of heroic decision-making frameworks include recognition that authentic excellence requires systematic preparation for choosing transcendent values over immediate welfare, development of meaning-based motivation systems that function under extreme pressure, and creation of cultural support systems that reinforce exceptional individual choices that serve collective benefit. Contemporary research on moral decision-making under pressure validates ancient understanding that individuals require systematic preparation to choose transcendent values over immediate welfare when facing ultimate stakes. The integration of value-based education with practical capability development creates psychological frameworks that enable heroic choice. The international influence of heroic decision-making appears in documented cases throughout ancient civilizations, where individuals made similar decisions, choices that prioritized cultural achievement over personal survival. The cross-cultural appearance of heroic choice frameworks suggests universal human capacity for transcendent decision-making when supported by appropriate educational and cultural systems. Chapter 6. The Death of Achilles. The transformation of individual achievement into cultural immortality. In the shadow of Troy's walls, where Paris's arrow found its mark in history's greatest warrior, we witness the ultimate transformation that defines authentic masculinity. The systematic conversion of individual mortality into cultural immortality through achievement that transcends personal existence while creating permanent value for subsequent generations. The archaeological evidence surrounding Achilles' death reveals sophisticated ancient understanding of how individual achievement can transcend biological limitation through cultural transmission mechanisms that preserve and amplify human excellence across generational boundaries. The burial practices, memorial construction, and cultural preservation systems document systematic approaches to transforming personal achievement into civilizational asset. The preserved descriptions of Achilles' funeral in the Iliad provide detailed documentation of Bronze Age cultural transmission mechanisms. The elaborate funeral games, competitive exhibitions, artistic performances, and memorial construction created systematic methods for encoding individual excellence into cultural memory while inspiring subsequent achievement through historical example. Contemporary research in cultural transmission reveals how exceptional individuals can achieve functional immortality through systematic preservation of their achievements, methodologies, and philosophical frameworks in ways that continue influencing human development long after their biological death. The study of cultural heroes demonstrates how individual excellence can transcend personal mortality through institutional preservation. The funeral games organized following Achilles' death represent sophisticated understanding of how competitive excellence can preserve and transmit heroic capabilities across generational boundaries. The systematic organization of athletic, artistic, and intellectual competitions created educational frameworks that enabled cultural transmission of heroic methodologies while inspiring contemporary achievement. Archaeological evidence from Bronze Age funeral complexes reveals elaborate systems designed for cultural preservation and transmission. The monumental architecture, artistic programs, and institutional arrangements demonstrate civilizational investment in preserving exceptional individual achievement while creating inspirational resources for subsequent development. The preserved accounts of the funeral games include detailed descriptions of competitive standards, prize distributions, and performance evaluations that suggest systematic approaches to measuring and preserving excellence. The integration of athletic, artistic, and intellectual competitions demonstrates comprehensive understanding of heroic capability that transcended purely military achievement. The memorial construction following Achilles' death created permanent cultural landmarks that served educational and inspirational functions for subsequent generations. The systematic investment in monumental architecture demonstrates civilizational understanding of how physical structures can preserve and transmit cultural values across extended time periods. The preserved descriptions of Achilles' tomb complex include detailed architectural specifications, artistic programs, and institutional arrangements that enabled ongoing cultural transmission through permanent memorial structures. The integration of practical and spiritual functions demonstrates sophisticated understanding of cultural preservation methodology. The artistic programs incorporated into memorial construction included narrative relief sculpture, symbolic decoration, and architectural integration that encoded comprehensive cultural understanding within permanent structures. The systematic preservation of cultural knowledge through artistic programs demonstrates advanced understanding of educational methodology through visual media. The cultural transmission mechanisms established following Achilles' death included systematic preservation of his methodologies, philosophical frameworks, and achievement patterns in forms accessible to subsequent generations. The development of educational programs based on heroic examples demonstrates civilizational commitment to transmitting excellence across temporal boundaries. The preserved literary traditions document systematic efforts to maintain accurate historical records while creating inspirational narratives that could motivate subsequent achievement. The integration of historical accuracy with inspirational content demonstrates sophisticated understanding of educational methodology that serves both preservation and motivation functions. The philosophical frameworks developed around Achilles' achievement created systematic approaches to understanding heroic excellence that could guide subsequent individual development while maintaining cultural continuity. The development of heroic philosophy demonstrates civilizational understanding of how individual achievement can serve educational functions. The international influence of Achilles' cultural transmission appears in documented adoption of similar memorial practices, competitive systems, and cultural preservation methods throughout the ancient Mediterranean. The cross-cultural influence demonstrates universal recognition of methodologies for transforming individual achievement into cultural resource. The diplomatic implications of Achilles' cultural preservation include systematic recognition of exceptional achievement that transcended political boundaries while creating cultural standards that influenced international relationships. The development of heroic cultural diplomacy demonstrates understanding of how individual excellence can serve collective political objectives. The economic systems that supported cultural transmission included substantial resource allocation for memorial construction, educational program maintenance, and artistic preservation that demonstrated civilizational investment in cultural continuity. The systematic economic support for cultural transmission demonstrates understanding of long-term value creation through individual achievement preservation. The preserved accounting records from various palace complexes document specific budget allocations for memorial construction, artistic commissioning, and educational program support that suggest systematic institutional approaches to cultural preservation. The economic commitment demonstrates civilizational understanding of individual achievement as collective asset. The technological innovations required for cultural preservation included advanced construction techniques, artistic methodologies, and preservation systems that enabled permanent cultural transmission across extended time periods. The systematic development of preservation technology demonstrates civilizational commitment to maintaining cultural achievement despite temporal challenges. The architectural innovations developed for memorial construction influenced building techniques throughout the Mediterranean region, while creating templates for subsequent memorial projects. The systematic development of monumental architecture demonstrates understanding of how physical structures can serve cultural transmission functions. The artistic innovations required for comprehensive cultural preservation influenced subsequent artistic development while creating methodologies for encoding complex cultural information within permanent visual media. The systematic integration of artistic and educational functions created precedents for cultural transmission through artistic programs. The religious implications of heroic cultural transmission include theological understanding of how individual achievement can transcend biological mortality through spiritual mechanisms that preserve essential human qualities in forms accessible to subsequent generations. The development of heroic religious frameworks demonstrates systematic approaches to understanding transcendent value. The theological frameworks developed around heroic achievement created systematic understanding of how individual excellence participates in transcendent reality while serving practical educational functions. The integration of spiritual and practical elements demonstrates sophisticated understanding of heroic cultural transmission. The ritual practices developed for heroic memorialization created systematic approaches to cultural preservation that integrated spiritual and educational functions while providing psychological resources for contemporary inspiration and development. The systematic development of memorial rituals demonstrates civilizational understanding of cultural transmission methodology. The biological implications of cultural transmission include understanding of how exceptional individual achievement can influence subsequent genetic and cultural evolution through systematic preservation and transmission of superior methodologies, philosophical frameworks, and achievement patterns that enhance collective human capability. The evolutionary implications of heroic cultural transmission suggest systematic understanding of how individual excellence can contribute to collective human development through cultural mechanisms that preserve and amplify superior capabilities across generational boundaries. The systematic preservation of heroic achievement demonstrates evolutionary understanding of cultural selection. The psychological frameworks required for cultural transmission include systematic development of meaning-based motivation that enables individuals to pursue achievement that transcends personal benefit while contributing to collective cultural development. The integration of individual and collective benefit demonstrates sophisticated understanding of psychological sustainability. The folk memory preservation of Achilles' achievement created cultural templates that enabled subsequent civilizations to develop similar approaches to individual excellence while maintaining cultural continuity across political and technological changes. The persistence of heroic cultural frameworks demonstrates universal human recognition of transcendent achievement value. The educational implications of heroic cultural transmission include systematic approaches to developing exceptional individuals while preserving and transmitting methodologies that enable sustained cultural excellence across generational boundaries. The integration of individual development with cultural preservation demonstrates sophisticated understanding of educational methodology. Modern applications of heroic cultural transmission include recognition that authentic individual achievement must serve transcendent purposes that benefit subsequent generations, systematic development of cultural preservation mechanisms that maintain excellence across technological and social changes, and creation of educational systems that inspire contemporary achievement through historical example. Contemporary research on cultural evolution validates ancient understanding that exceptional individuals can influence collective human development through systematic preservation and transmission of superior capabilities, methodologies, and philosophical frameworks. The study of cultural transmission mechanisms demonstrates scientific validation of ancient heroic cultural understanding. The civilizational implications of studying heroic cultural transmission include recognition that societies must develop systematic approaches to identifying, developing, preserving, and transmitting exceptional individual achievement in forms that serve collective benefit while inspiring subsequent excellence and cultural development. Gentlemen, we conclude this comprehensive examination of Achilles, where authentic understanding begins, with recognition that the true measure of masculine excellence lies not in personal achievement, but in the systematic transformation of individual capability into civilizational benefit that transcends biological mortality while inspiring subsequent generations toward their own heroic development. You now possess historical knowledge that places you among the intellectual elite who understand how authentic heroic masculinity was systematically developed, deployed, and preserved by the greatest civilization in human history. You comprehend the Bronze Age principles that created legendary capability through systematic education, controlled adversity, comprehensive character building, and ultimate service to transcendent purposes. The archaeological evidence, preserved literary sources, and systematic cultural analysis we have examined reveals uncomfortable truths about contemporary masculine development. Modern civilization has systematically eliminated every condition that produces authentic heroic capability while creating comfort-based alternatives that promise achievement without requiring the systematic development that produces genuine excellence. This knowledge creates inescapable responsibility. You cannot claim ignorance about what develops authentic masculine capability. You cannot pretend that contemporary comfort culture offers pathways to the excellence that defined history's greatest men. You cannot accept mediocrity when you understand the systematic methodologies that created legendary achievement. The choice before you mirrors Achilles' fundamental decision. Withdraw to comfortable obscurity that preserves personal safety while contributing nothing to civilizational advancement, or engage systematically with the demanding development processes that create authentic excellence despite personal cost and social resistance. The legacy of Achilles lives on through men who choose systematic development over casual comfort, dangerous excellence over safe mediocrity, comprehensive character building over superficial achievement, and transcendent service over personal advancement. Men who understand that true strength serves civilizational purposes, that authentic capability requires moral foundation, and that meaningful lives create value that transcends individual mortality. Your participation in this heroic tradition is not automatic. It cannot be achieved through content consumption, motivational inspiration, or comfortable lifestyle adjustments. It must be earned through demonstrated commitment to the systematic development processes that create authentic excellence rather than the appearance of achievement. The Bronze Age methodologies we have examined: prophetic programming that creates psychological inevitability, comprehensive educational systems that integrate physical, intellectual, and moral development, controlled adversity that builds genuine capability, systematic mentorship that enables individual optimization, and cultural frameworks that channel individual achievement towards civilizational benefit, remain as relevant today as they were 3 millennia ago. The biological principles underlying heroic development, systematic stress exposure that creates adaptive enhancement, comprehensive nutrition supports optimal performance, environmental design that eliminates comfortable alternatives while providing challenging opportunities, and social frameworks that support exceptional individual development, function identically in contemporary contexts when applied with systematic commitment. The psychological frameworks that enable heroic choice, identity-based motivation that transcends immediate comfort, value hierarchies that prioritize transcendent achievement over personal welfare, meaning structures that provide psychological sustainability during inevitable hardship, and legacy consciousness that maintains motivation through awareness of cultural impact, create the same capability enhancement effects they produced in ancient contexts. The question that determines your trajectory is not whether these methodologies work. Historical evidence and modern research confirm their effectiveness. The question is whether you possess the intellectual honesty to recognize that authentic excellence requires systematic discomfort, and the moral courage to implement demanding development processes despite social pressure and personal convenience. This channel will continue providing the historical knowledge, systematic methodologies, and philosophical frameworks necessary for authentic masculine development through study of history's greatest examples. Subscribe not as passive consumption, but as active commitment to your own systematic development according to proven principles, rather than contemporary comfort alternatives. The choice is yours, gentlemen. Choose systematically. Choose dangerously. Choose with full awareness that authentic excellence demands everything, while promising nothing except the possibility of transcendent achievement that serves purposes greater than personal satisfaction. The shield of Achilles awaits those who prove worthy of bearing it.